My name is Jess Rayner. I'm here with my dad, Tom Rayner.
My
And
name
this,
is Tom Rayner, and I'm here with my son, Jess Rayner. I
in
just
case,
wanted to
in
be.
case they missed it the first time, thanks for repeating that. And this is the Church Answers podcast. We are so glad you guys have joined us today. We love coming on and talking about the local church. We love talking about local church leaders. We love talking about the questions that are out there that maybe you didn't even know you had, and hopefully giving some answers along the way. So today we're talking about being a pastor. We're talking about traits of a pastor, and we're talking about guests' perspective of those traits of a pastor. That one of the things I've enjoyed is what this podcast has done for you and me is it's allowed us to go back in time. I hear stories that I've never heard before
It's
of
really
your
sad.
ministry days. It's just I don't think it would come up in natural conversation, but since we're talking ministry here,
No, I think it would be grandchildren, sports, a little bit of politics, but probably in that order: grandchildren,
entrepreneurship, business.
entrepreneurship. Oh, dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you love talking about my dog. It's still a whole weird
Oh, I
thing.
forgot he's your dog. He
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So I want to go back in time a little bit here.
All right.
You are an introvert.
Uh
You
huh.
both self-proclaimed and others proclaimed. You're most comfortable in a corner, looking down potentially at a phone. But yet you served as a pastor for many, many years. How did you interact with church guests? Did you run from them? I could literally see you like going the other direction. Like if you see someone you didn't know in a hallway, like you would turn. I could see you like jumping in a closet. Did you hide in closets a lot?
I did not.
Okay.
I did none of the above. I was a definite functional extrovert. I knew from a categorical point of view that a pastor had to have a perception of friendliness.
Hmm.
And there was a bit of, is that deception? I don't think so. It's just I had to go contrary to my personality, especially during worship services, especially as I'm walking hallways or speaking to people before and after. I had to, because quite frankly, I knew logically that that was the one day that most people will see me. And if
Hmm.
I don't say or speak or act friendly to them, then I'm missing out on that one day. Now, let me tell you where we got this information that I'm going to share with you. We have done so many consultations. I know we're well over 1,000, depending on how you count them, since we've been around since 1988. And most of that time, we've done guest surveys where someone's secret guest comes in
Hmm.
and says, "This is what I see at this church."
Yep.
Over the years, they talk a lot about pastors. And I've gleaned some of that information from recent years from some of those secret surveys, just simply by going back into our consultations and looking at the verbatims and just seeing what they said. There was a lot about the pastor.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what we're going to talk about after you talk about Cheney.
Yeah. Well, just one more thing though. Just be honest. Did you ever hide? Was there ever a moment that you hid being an introverted pastor? I mean, surely there's a time that you jumped in a closet. You went to the bathroom. You had to do something to hide.
The closest thing I can think about was when I was doing a consultation in Canada, and Brad Wagner and I were doing the worship services,
Hmm.
the assessment, and it was a large church, and it had this huge foyer. And he said something like, "I'm going to the restroom." I said, "You are not leaving me out here by myself." And he said,
All
"You want to
right. Well,
go? You want to go to the restroom?" But nobody knew who I was, so it wasn't really. I
right.
just didn't
Right.
want someone to come up and greet me.
All right. I probably would have bet that at some point when you served as a local church pastor that you hid. But it was worth a shot. I'm still going to hold to the fact that you just don't remember and you probably did it. That's how introverted
There
you
could be
are.
some truth to that too. But what you're saying would be my natural inclination.
Okay. Okay.
I just run, Tom, run.
You're right. Well, before we talk about these traits that guests like to see in a pastor, we do, as you mentioned, we do want to thank Cheney Associates. They are our sponsor for today's podcast. In fact, we had some recent podcasts with them as well, or with Steve in particular. Wonderful, wonderful group that loves to help local church leaders, particularly with bookkeeping and accounting and finances. If you
We
are
learned a lot about him, didn't we?
We did. They do a lot. they are dedicated to the church. That's their main
Absolutely.
focus. They don't do other types of accounting, other types of bookkeeping. They are church only. And so to use Steve Cheney's words, they're vertical. And so they know a lot
Come on,
about
Steve.
the
Those are
church.
business words. Those are business words.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
means you
So
focus on the church.
yeah.
That's what a
So
vertical is.
if you have any need about finances and bookkeeping, just go reach out to them. It doesn't matter. You think, well, we can't afford them. You don't know. They love working with churches all sizes, and so reach out to them. We're going to thank them today. They are all about taking things off the church leader's plate so that the church leader can focus on doing more ministry. So check out Cheney Associates. All right, so we're looking at 7 personality traits based off your years of research, data, just gathering information that guests like in a pastor. And if you're a pastor, when and I hear these things, sometimes and maybe this is just my personality, I like to see, oh, do I have all of them? Like, do I have all 7? What if I don't have 7? Am I failing? That's a bit of my personality there.
You have all 7.
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
You have all 7.
Well,
Let's
the
just get
whole,
that out of the way.
you're my dad and you have to say those things.
No, I
We'll see.
don't. No, I don't. That's your mother.
The, the,
I don't always speak positively about you
that's true.
to
That
your
is true.
face.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I don't know that, but don't tell mom. So, um, just as a reminder for you, if you're a pastor and you're listening to the traits, these are just what guests are thinking. This is just what they're looking for. It does not mean you have to have all 7, or if you don't have all 7, you're failing. But maybe what this can do is serve as an area to help you think more about how you can relate to guests, because this is the perspective from a guest. And
Hey,
so I just wanted to start off with that, but before we jump into it.
so 2 caveats. Number 1, this is not all Tom Rayner. I got it
Mhm.
from many reports that we have in my folders where I was able to go back and read a lot of them. So this isn't always Tom Rayner taking them in. And secondly, as best I could tell, I did not tally them, but as best I could tell, these were the 7 most common. There
Okay.
were a lot others. Maybe I missed a number here and there, but I saw these repeated in the reports that I read pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Our whole goal for this podcast is for you as a pastor to be thinking about your interactions with a guest. Think about what they're looking for, whether they realize it or not. And so that way you can help them feel more welcome. So we're looking at 7 different personality traits guests like in a pastor. The first one is down to earth. You want to explain that one to us?
I think it's self-evident in many ways, but here's the background to it. Many people who come to a church, particularly those who haven't been in church a while, or maybe they're coming from another faith belief system that doesn't do church the way
Hmm.
most Protestant churches do it, or
Right.
most churches do it, and they come in and they have this expectation of formality, very, very
High church.
aloof,
Mhm.
aloof. Well, not necessarily high church or low church, but just the sense that. I mean, I went to a global Methodist church not too long ago, and the pastor was it was the formal service, but he was down to earth as well. So it's not necessarily the liturgical or formality of the service. It's just, is that person a real person? That's the way I hear it.
Mhm.
He just act like a real guy. Nothing pretentious about him. And
Mhm.
I don't know why the guests would expect that. Maybe that's because for many, many years, pastors did hold that posture. Even before you were born, Jess, pastors would be removed from the people in terms of their personality, and the people would think, okay, I really can't get inside that bubble, whatever that bubble is. So
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
down to earth, down
Yeah.
to earth.
And I can see that from a cultural perspective. I mean, even I could think are still some cultures out there that, the pastor is highly esteemed, and not necessarily a bad way, but for someone who's coming out of a different background, if they're coming into a church and the pastor says hello, greets them, talks to them just like a normal person, that might be surprising
Hmm.
for them. So down to earth. There was one of the quotes that we have from a guest that visited church said this: "I hadn't been in church in over 7 years. When I visited this church, I was shocked at how the pastor seemed to be a regular guy.
Heard that.
When I used to go to church, pastors presented themselves as high and mighty, not this pastor." And so it's a relatability that
And some of
has
it is
to happen.
culture too. And I've seen it in my lifetime. Culture shift hey, the formality is not as intense as it used to be.
Right. Right. Yeah. Second trait, other centered.
Now, I want to get on the negative side on this one for just a moment because I saw this in a recent example recently in the last 2 years where I saw a pastor talking to people before and after the services. And in the cases where I was listening, it was all about him. He was telling stuff about him. He was
Mm,
telling stuff about what he had been doing. And I could tell, I've been around long enough and I think I can see body language and I can read expressions somewhat. I could tell the people were really saying, hey, how about me? I've got my hurts and needs. And I know pastors have them too, but it's
mhm.
this time, it's the one day of the week that you have with these people, most of them, and they want an ear. They just want that for it. Even if it's a brief moment. My pastor heard me, and that pastor failed. I
Mm,
mean, many do not, but that pastor failed miserably. He just seemed determined to tell everything that's going on in his life. It's the same thing with the sermon. Personal illustrations are good,
mhm.
family illustrations are good, but don't let it tilt so far that there's not enough about other things going on in people's lives either.
Yeah.
So that's my comment there.
Yeah, I do think, especially if you're meeting someone new and the conversation feels awkward, it's easier to talk about yourself than it is the other person. And so it could be a little bit of a social default,
Right.
just because you can talk about yourself. And so as much as you can, anytime you're meeting with a first time guest, just ask about them. There's super easy questions that I think you can ask. Are you new to the area? And typically like, no, well, at least for in my context, they're like, no, we moved here. And then that's the
So
opportunity.
many of them did. Hey, I wish they all could be California. It's just, man, they're coming from California, New York, and Ohio, all over the place.
Yeah, and that's easy question to ask. Well, no, we just moved here. Well, what's the backstory? How'd you get here? Why'd you move here? One, how long you been in the area? That's another good question. And so just easy. If you're a pastor, maybe this is a thing that you're like, oh, I just maybe they're more introverted and don't know how to interact maybe with first time guests. Just have like 4 or 5 key questions that you can ask just
And,
as a
and,
default.
and be
Uh,
careful with family questions, depending upon the context. If you,
mhm,
as an example, see a lady there by herself,
right,
don't ask a marriage question, don't ask a family question. It could be a man as well.
right.
But be careful on something that could immediately put you into discomfort and them into discomfort.
Right. Don't ask, are you married? Don't ask, do you have kids?
Hmm.
You could say, if you want to ask a family question, do you have any family in the area? That's always a question they can quickly say no, and you can kind of read their body language. But the whole idea is when you're interacting with a first time guest, just make sure you're asking them about them. And we're talking about first time guests. It's
Yes.
okay to talk about yourself as a pastor, and
Yes.
hopefully
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah, yeah.
church members that you can talk to, that you can have this, but it's that impression that you're trying to make that guests are looking for. They want the opportunity to be able to interact. I often say one of the things I say to first time guests too is that I tell them it took a lot of courage for you to be here today, and so thank
Hmm.
you for being brave. And
That's
that
a good word.
immediately kind of puts them down because it puts you're putting yourself in their shoes that, man, they just walked into this church family that they have no idea what it's going to be like. And so when you're able to just kind of let them take a breath and then be able to ask some questions, I think that's a good way of saying, hey, I see you. Just do something that says, I see you, to guests, and really hit her that other centered. The
This isn't about the pastor, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Do I hold the record at the church of Spring Hill for making a guest the most uncomfortable?
Without a doubt.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know how this person is still coming to the
I
churches.
was shocked when I heard she came back.
Yes, yeah.
But
I don't know if we told the story. I don't even know if I want to tell the story.
uh,
Let
you
let's
can't.
just can I summarize it?
Yeah,
Can
you
I
do it. You do it.
My dad confused another young lady for his wife.
It was
Uh
dark.
it I I don't know how this young lady is still coming to the church. Great. Just started volunteering. Oh yeah, she's been volunteering for a little bit, getting involved in the church. Amazing. Somehow, by the grace of God, you did not scare her away.
I saw her in the parking lot now that I'm a outside parking greeter.
Uh-huh.
I saw her, and she was like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
It was like it was the old man who thought in the dark that I was his wife, and
Memorable
Oh,
experience for sure.
for everybody in the
Yeah.
church, for
That is
everybody.
not the other centered we're going for in this second trait. So
There you go.
please don't get confused. The quote that we had from a guest said this, that the pastor's always asking about how others are doing. He really seems to care about how other people are doing. So we're looking at 7 traits. Our second trait is others centered, things that guests are looking for, things that maybe they're expecting, maybe they're unsaid expectations, but they're looking for this. The third thing is a sense of humor. Here's the quote. I'll go ahead and read the quote for this one. There's no doubt the pastor takes his ministry seriously. He just doesn't take himself too seriously. He seems to have a lot of fun. And this is important.
Yeah,
Levity,
levity. There's a book out there called Levity Factor.
the levity effect.
The
I think.
levity effect. Thank you.
Yep.
The levity effect. It's older, but it
Good
still
book.
says a lot about how to interrelate with people.
Hmm. Yeah, it's super important. I mean, yeah, I mean, anytime you can crack a joke about yourself, that makes you, I think, makes you a little bit more relatable. But even if just in the conversation, just having a smile, you know, just little things you can interject humor can go a long way, because it does go back to putting people at ease. So yeah, humor, we love it. That's something that
Oh,
I think I've learned well
you,
from you and your mom.
my mom,
You and my mom. What did I say?
you and your mom.
Yeah, there we go. There.
Look, my mom's dead, but you probably learned a few things from her because she was funny too.
Oh, there's timing, perfect timing right there, for humor.
So here's what we should do, Jess. We should do a series of podcasts where we do nothing but show the family text.
I think that would be unwise.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's just the what, 8 of us interacting with one another, the 8 adults.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I go, more than 2 hours without looking at the family text thread, I'm lost. I sometimes I just can't keep up. I just give a
Some
thumbs
of
up.
it is commentary on things that you wonder why they think we need commentary on them. But
It's all sorts of stuff, but it does. It makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. So, um, just something you can do as a pastor is just make yourself laugh at certain times. I think that one of the lessons I've learned over the years when I first began to preach, if it's a humorous beginning, is to make sure I already have laughter inside of me, to make
mhm,
sure before I even begin to speak that there's already joy in my heart. And
good
so
point.
just having a sense of humor along the way. Not every sermon starts with laughter. Some are some more serious, and obviously that wouldn't be appropriate. But just finding places to have a few jokes. I love a good dad joke along the way. Now, I'm not saying go tell guests dad jokes.
I know you love them. I haven't heard one yet, but I know you love them.
You talking about a good one because
A
you've
good
heard
one.
them?
Yeah. Yes, I've heard them, but I haven't heard a good one
Well,
from you.
I
I've had several good ones that I've shared with y'all.
honestly I don't tell them for your benefit.
Mm.
They're for me because I think they're funny.
Okay, sounds like a winner to me.
So that was our third trait, sense of humor, which brings us about to the halfway point. And so I think at this point it'd be good to take a quick break. Now we're not leaving, but a quick break from the traits, and to thank our other sponsor that we have today.
Upward Sports is one of my favorite organizations in the world. They're the largest youth sports organization in the world, but it's not their sheer size that makes them great. It's their ministry. I've said this on more than one occasion. I wish I had known them better when I was a pastor. I mean, they've been around that long, because the ministry is second to none. They're helping you form sports leagues. They're helping you fund runners that will participate in sports, softball, basketball. The list goes on and on. I think they started with basketball. I think
Hmm.
they were actually called Upward Basketball at one time. But you want to reach your community, Upward is the organization to reach your community. And this is so cool. You're not pushing people to come to you. They want to come because you have a sports league. You
Right.
have something there for them, and
Right.
they'll customize your own sports outreach ministry. If you have a gym, oh, that'll work great. If you have a parking lot, oh, that'll work great. If
Mm.
you can borrow a lot from somebody, that'll work great. They'll make it work according to what you have. So I commend Upward Sports again and again. And one of the humorous things that we tie humor into Outward Sports is that the director of marketing is the same name of the wife of our own Matt McGraw.
Oh,
Her
that's
name is
right.
Jennifer McGraw. And Matt had to change his phone book in order to answer the phone correctly and not tell someone that was a business partner, "Hey, babe, how you doing?"
Right, right. Love those moments in life. Love those moments in life. Yeah, we're super thankful for Upward, and their ministry and what they provide to the local church. So we're looking at 7 personality traits guests like to see in a pastor. So far, we've seen down to earth, other centered, sense of humor, and our fourth one is humility, being humble. One quote we have from a guest at a church said, "The pastor at the church I'm visiting is one of the most humble people I know. He never talks about himself unless it is self-deprecation," which goes back a bit to that humor we were talking about.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
how does this look like humility if you're a pastor and you're talking to a first time guest? I mean, is this something intentional? How does this work?
It is for me, Jess, and I cannot speak for all pastors. I'm not saying that I'm not humble when I see a first time guest, but I have to do something differently. When I see a first time guest, number one, I have to say a quick prayer because I know nothing about him. Lord, just allow me this time to just speak to him the way you want me to. And then secondly, I have to put them in my shoes, and I have to put me in their shoes. I'm sorry, I
Right,
said
there
it
you go.
backwards. I have to put me in their shoes and think, okay, if these people are like me, which not many people are, because that would be the extreme, they really are uncomfortable, and I need to do the best to make them comfortable.
Hmm.
And humility is just the act of caring for others a lot more than you care for yourself. And I know we've got that in other places as well.
Hmm.
Here's what I tell you. I'm not always humble, but when I'm not humble, I usually get humbled.
Hmm.
So I have this I have this self-serving desire. It's kind of a paradox. I'm going to be humble or I'm going to get humbled.
Right.
So that shouldn't be my motive. I mean, I should just be like Christ and have his humility from Philippians 2 and just be that person.
Hmm.
But when you're going up to a guest, first time guest in particular, humility is paramount. It
Hmm.
really will make them feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I think if you're, following along here, you said, well, you said other centered, wouldn't that just make you naturally humble? Not necessarily. I think this is more of a posture
Hmm.
than verbiage. Other centered is simply, asking about them and putting them their story ahead of your story, which does create some humility, but it's a posture. It's just that, yeah, again, not to repeat myself, it's just understanding, what the first time guest is feeling, and the fact they're having to be brave, and just acknowledging that and have a humility and just really just a sense of gratitude that goes along with that. So,
Little tip on this too. I will never say that I've been a Christian superstar, and I say that so humbly, but I'm talking about the world where people are known and
hmm.
they're the famous Christians, if you will. And though I may not fit that category, I've been in that category with people,
Hmm.
and I've watched those people. And I want to tell you what really irks anybody that interacts with people who think they're better than themselves, whether it's a pastor in a church or it's one of these Christian performers or speakers. It is when you're talking to them and you're looking above their head. In other
Mm.
words, you're looking at the crowd, trying to see who's next, who do I need to talk to,
Hmm.
instead of looking in their eyes and engaging them.
That's good.
And that's an act of humility. That is an act of relational skills that we're going to get to in a minute.
Hmm.
But if you're talking to someone, let them know that you have eye contact with them. That matters so very much. I remember someone back when before I got into that world of that circuit that I was talking to, and I just admired him so much. And I saw that he was looking over the top of my head.
Hmm.
I knew he wasn't listening to a word I was saying, or barely, and it was deflating. And it
Yeah.
was a lesson to me. Hey, give them eye contact.
Yeah, that is really good. That is something to think about. Yeah, where your eyes go, and if you're actually engaging with them, and having that humility, just to know that the person in front of you, God's put them right there, and make them feel like that.
Yep.
So that's good. Our fifth trait, and this can be a bit overarching. You could say, well, all these fall under this, but there's some intentionality behind it. It's being relational. One guest said the pastor says he's an introvert, but he has a good relational skills. but he has good relational skills. The 2 times I spoke with him were very enjoyable conversations. This is just the ability to relate to people, even
And so,
even as an introvert.
and it is sometimes making yourself do things where you're uncomfortable for the sake of the guest or whoever is in that position.
Mhm.
Uh, we've talked about introversion too much, but that is just something I have to do on an ongoing basis. If I really care for someone, I am going to look them in the eyes and talk to them. So I was on a video conference call. I'm going to mention his name because you know him well, and I do too. Philip Henry,
Yeah.
and that guy is the classic extrovert.
Hmm.
I mean, he's just talking, 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 and I'm thinking, man, no wonder he's been such a success. He connects with so many people, and I'm thinking, I'm just going to listen for a while and just listen to him. I've never had that ability just to carry on a conversation indefinitely. I'm jealous of people like him who do, but sometimes you just have to be relational, even if you don't feel like you are relational.
Yeah, being relational. That was our 5th trait. Our 6th trait that we're looking at. Again, these are things that guests like to see in a pastor. Which I don't know. We either should have put this one first or last, but it's number 6. God centered. One guest said, "Pastor Frank is a man of prayer. You can just tell he walks with God."
There is no way to create this character trait unless you're doing it.
Hmm.
You can't fake it. You can't talk about it. People know the work of the Holy Spirit in someone's life is usually pretty evident, and people know if that person is walking with God or not.
Hmm.
And that's certainly the case of first-time guests with pastors. Now, the order I put them in was my recollection of the order of frequency.
Okay.
It's not necessarily accurate, but it's my recollection of it. But this was mentioned. There were 20, 30 that I grabbed. And
Okay.
so to be in this top 7 was significant. We have guests saying, oh, that pastor's a person of prayer. That person, he walks with God.
Yeah.
That's something that you can't fake. You just got to be doing it all the time.
So I had an experience as a first time guest. This was years and years ago. Well, this would have been 2011, I believe. Um, my wife and I were on a trip, and we stopped in Birmingham, Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
to on our trip to go to church on a Sunday morning, and we visited the church at Brook Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in there, and we knew about the church. We'd heard about it. Some great things were happening there, and we went and we visited. We knew of the pastor. I don't know if we'd actually ever met before, but we knew of him, and he knew of our family. But I said, between service, we went to the first service, or I don't know which one we went to. We were between services, and I went to. I told my wife, I said, I just want to go say hello real fast. Can we just go say hello? And she said, sure. And I walked up. He's at the front of the worship service, and I introduced myself, and I said, hi, I'm Jess Rayner. And he goes, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you're here. I was like, oh my goodness. He goes, I've been praying for you. I was like, what? And we had experienced some loss in our life. How are you guys doing? And it was so amazing that, again, first time guest, we didn't even go to his church, we're just traveling through. All of a sudden, it felt like we were the only people in the room.
That's a gift.
His name is David Platt.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about just God centered? David Platt, and just that moment made us feel more seen and more heard as a first time guest. I don't know if we ever met, maybe once before, but he was such a man of God. He had been praying for us. He instantly knew and started ministering to us, even though we lived like 3.5 hours away from his church.
And
You can't fake that.
you're still remembering that with deep fondness
Mm-hmm.
14 years later.
Yep.
That tells you a lot there.
Yep. It has impacted me. So God-centered, absolutely. Which brings us to our final and 7th trait, not defensive. Here's the quote we have from a guest that visited church. I heard someone criticize the pastor after worship services. I was amazed at how he responded kindly and gently. I would have hit the person.
Yeah, I don't know who that is, but be careful.
Whoever that first time, again, that was a first time guest talking about the
Yes.
pastor that they saw. But yeah, it's pastors do receive a lot of criticism, and it's easy over time to get defensive and to be able to put the walls up really fast. But for
Hitting
first,
someone's a lot of walls.
well, yeah, again, that was the guest viewpoint of what was being said to the pastor. But the impact that was made was that the pastor chose not to be defensive. The
Hmm.
pastor did not put up walls. And so this is a good reminder that even when you're talking with church members, first time guests can be nearby listening.
That is
Um,
for sure.
and so just be mindful of the conversations you're having. And so with all humility, all relatability, all God centeredness, make sure you're shepherding in every single way. Um,
Yes. And make sure you don't sit near people that you think are your wife and they're not.
yes, it's just a good rule in life and just in general. So, uh, 7 personality traits guests like to see in a pastor. And again, the whole point of this is just to be thinking. Think about your interactions with guests. Think about what they're feeling. Think about what they're looking for. Not that you want to try and fake anything, but just with a genuineness of heart, have this desire just to connect with them, have relatability, be other centered, be God centered. These are some traits I think that will benefit you as a church leader when you're interacting with church guests. And so
This
I
was
hope
a
this,
this was a fun exercise for me. Just
yeah,
going back
I
here
hope
reviewing
this
them.
was good. Before we head out, we do want to thank Cheney Associates one more time. They are just the leading accounting firm for the church. And so if you have any accounting, bookkeeping, finance needs, just go reach out to them. They are ready to help. They're willing to help. They're excited to help. If you missed some recent podcast with Steve Cheney on it with us, go check it out. You'll hear his heart on how much he loves to free up the church leader, the pastor, to
Hmm.
go and do ministry. Two, he saves money. He finds money. We heard a story where he found over $100,000 for a church. Not kidding. He found it. It belonged to the church. They didn't know, and he found it. So you never know.
And he would say, not guaranteed, just an example.
But it happened.
It did happen.
But it happened. So, well, thank you guys so much for listening to us today. We love being on this podcast. We love talking about church, the local church, the Big C church. We love talking about all that God is doing. We hope these things are fruitful for you guys. I know as a local church pastor, they're fruitful for me. They're such good reminders. And so we're excited you're here. If you've been watching or listening, we love, as always, for you to like, give a thumbs up, connect with us in some way. If you're on YouTube watching this, give us a comment. Maybe there's an extra trait that you want to add to the episode today.
And there are others. There are a lot of others.
There are. We love to see it. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.